Hi, it's Curtis from STEM Recording, here to talk to you about gear, a specific type of gear, piece of gear that you will never be able to purchase or replace, and it's these. It's your ears. It's the most important piece of gear we'll ever have. It is imperative that we take care of our hearing. Our hearing begins to deteriorate from the age of 9, and many things are attributable to that, but most importantly, when we play live music, we need to protect our hearing. So I've been using in-ear monitors for the past 25 years, and I encourage all my people I work with and all the musicians I work with to use in-ear monitoring. It's not easy. You have to bring, several situations you may find yourself in where it's even complicated. For instance, you bring a piece of gear with you. I have a Shure PSM 600. I've had this for about 20 years. It is a receiver. There's two pieces. There's a rack mount piece. That's the transmitter. That usually goes up by the soundboard with the sound man. He sends an aux to that, and then he can send whatever I want in my ears to that aux, and it's broadcast to my receiver, which is a little belt pack that I carry on my body. And then I have in-ear monitors that come from that. It's battery powered. It's pretty bulletproof. It's made of metal. I've had it for 20 years. It's never broken. It's a great piece of gear. So when you're in the market for in-ear monitoring setup, like my Shure PSM 600, it's not even made anymore, but you can still buy these. There's used ones, there's new ones. I'd recommend getting something new. One thing you want to think about is compression. Some of these come with compression. Sometimes it's automatic. Sometimes you can adjust it. Sometimes you can shut it off. Get one that you can shut off or adjust, because sometimes the limiting on some of these things it's a little obtrusive for me. It's more than I would need or want, and being able to adjust it or turn it off is a nice feature to have. Also, keep in mind, if you're buying something used, I believe in early 2000s, the FCC decided to use certain frequencies for emergency communications, for emergency vehicles like cop cars or paramedics, things like that, emergency channels. Some of the older PSM 600s, I know for sure, are in that frequency range and are no longer allowed to be used. Make sure you do not get one of those units. The problem would be twofold. One, you don't want to be in the middle of your song and suddenly hear, "Rampart, this is Squad 51. Please," you don't want that kind of stuff happening while you're trying to play your gig. That would be unnerving. Also, and probably more unnerving would be the fact that if your signal was to interfere with an emergency, you could be fined, and that could be both costly and it could probably cost more than your unit cost you entirely. So I wouldn't do that. So in addition to your transmitter and your receiver, the only other element is the in-ear monitors themselves. And there's so many different kinds. There are types that you have to go to an audiologist and have your ear fitted. There are Fender sells a really great pair that I use. They were made by a company in Tennessee called Orasonics. They're amazing. They're really, really good. They are universal fit, so 99% of people, they'll fit in their ears, unless you're like an MMA fighter or something and have cauliflower ear or something. They fit fine. The unfortunate thing about in-ear monitoring and monitors themselves is you can't try them on and then not buy them. It's not allowed. So Definitely do some research. You can overspend for these very easily. There's companies charging, $10,000 for in-ear monitors. I'm not kidding. They have diamonds on the little. You can really get ridiculous. You don't need anything crazy, but they're not cheap. And you can look to spend $300-400 for a pair, but they should last you for years. I've had my very first pair. I still have. They were $300, and Ultimate Ear, it was the company, and I still have them. They're taped together and glued together, and they look like they're 30 years old, but they still work. I don't use them that much any longer, but they still work. So if you get a good pair, they should last you a couple of decades if you're careful. And I used to play 3, 4, 5 nights a week, and we toured for several years and played every night of the week. So they've lasted me a long time. My in-ears have, you take care of them, and you immediately when you take them off, put them in the case. If you take care of them, they'll last. They're worth their money, and they will last a long time. Another thing I would mention in using in-ear monitoring of any kind is, especially if you sing vocals at all whatsoever, you must rehearse with these first. It's a learning curve. It's not the same as having a monitor at your feet or a monitor to your left or right. It's in your head, and it's very different, especially if you're doing any kind of vocals, even harmonies. It's important to know how much do I need of him, how much do I need of myself. It's a lot different than having a monitor 6 feet away from you really loud. It's considerably different. So definitely practice with them, get used to them. It's not easy at first, but there will come a point where you will not be able to work without them, and that's a good thing. But there are a lot of drawbacks. One of them is sometimes you find a sound guy that says, I don't have an extra aux. And you got to be delicate with the sound guy because you don't want your mix to suck. Most of the time they're lying. There is an aux. I've gone many times to the soundboard and said, okay, well, how about that one right there? And there's usually an aux. They're not using all their aux sends. If they are, you can say, well, which one goes to the drum wedge? Let me have that one. So there's options. You can, and you just be gentle. You don't know who you're dealing with. Some guys don't like to be shown up. It can be complicated. Also, you have to get a mix, and sometimes it takes a second to dial it in. So it can be irritating. There's some sound guys who don't really feel like they have the time. Sometimes you're playing with 4 bands or 5 bands on a bill, and you're the third band, and he wants to get you up and going, and suddenly drummer's like, hey, I have in-ear monitors. I'd like to check my mix. And it can be, some guys can get irritated. Be patient and make sure you get the mix you need, because it's important that you protect your hearing. So there are certain situations, however, where you may not have a sound guy. Let's say you're playing a little coffee house and it's a vocals only PA. There's not going to be a sound guy giving you a mix. So I have a separate setup for that. First of all, I always, in my kick drum, keep a boundary mic, which is a Shure Beta 91A. And I have a Kelly shoe mounting platform. It's a great piece of gear, $43, I believe, brand new. You put it inside your kick drum, you mount that 91A in there, and I leave it in there. It's there right now. It's in there all the time. That allows me to have, and it's served me well in many other instances too. There's been times where I came into a venue and the sound guy comes in with a realistic Radio Shack microphone to stick in my kick drum, and I'm like, I have a 91A in there. That'll work. Thank you. I also bring a Sennheiser 604, the little clip-on microphones. I bring 3 of them. I don't always use my toms. Mainly for my in-ears, all I need is kick, snare, bass, guitar, and a vocal. So if I don't have a sound guy and I'm on my own, I have that Beta 91A. I have a little clip-on snare mic. I have a little Behringer battery-powered mixer. And I'll run the kick and the snare. I'll split the bass line. I'll hang a E604, one of those flat Sennheiser microphones over the guitar amp, and I'll split the vocal mic. And you can get little XLR splitters. They're little cables that split. They're $12 each. I'll split the vocal, I'll split the bass, run to my little mixer, my kick and snare into my mixer, guitar into my mixer. Boom, I have a mix, my own mix. It's a way to protect yourself and to do it without a sound man. Also, in rehearsal, if you're rehearsing, a lot of guys rehearse in a practice place or a shed or a garage or a big noisy place. Your hearing is not immune from damage in a place like that either. You're still hurting your hearing. So always, you have some way of protecting your hearing. Going back to my gear. So there's two options. If I have the sound man, I use my in-ear monitoring system. If I don't have a sound man, I have my remote miking system. However, there's a third option that just became available. It's called the Yamaha EAD10. And we're going to do another episode where we're going to do an unboxing of my new Yamaha EAD10, which is a really cool little idea. It's just a little thing that clips onto your kick drum and kind of mics the whole area. And it goes out into a little module which can also take an auxiliary input from the PA or whatever. So if you're playing, like I said, at a coffee house with a vocals only PA, you clip this on your kick drum, run to your little module, take a little aux send out of the mixer, put it in your thing, and you have a full mix in your ear. We'll look into that later. Keep your eyes open for that. If you guys have any questions or want to look at, I'll put some information below about the gear I use and where I got it and the cost. Hi, thanks for stopping by. If you like our content, please hit the like and the subscribe button. If you have any comments, leave them below. Thank you.